How's it going, y'all? Aiden Anderson here with another round of Candidate Candids. In this series, we talk to candidates running in the local elections to learn more about them, their platform, and what they hope to do in office if elected. We're focusing on the county level races this year, and in this video, we've got the incumbent Latah County Sheriff, Richie Skiles. Let's get into it. We were just talking about this earlier before we started recording, but talking about the idea of campaigning while also handling and managing all of your responsibilities as sheriff. How is that going for you?
It's very time consuming. It's your free time schedule just got crossed off. Mm-hmm. It's good. It keeps you alert, keeps you on your toes. And I have good people who work for me, so I'm not so concerned about things that are going on at the sheriff's office because I have good people up there. So,
yeah, that makes sense. Remind me, you started as sheriff back in 2016, is that correct?
Yep, 2016. I ran for sheriff just before that, the term in 2012, and against the incumbent, and I lost by 102 votes at that time. So I decided to run again, and at that point, for that about 3.5 years or so, I worked for the city of Troy as their chief of police.
Gotcha. So this is not your first rodeo as far as elections?
No, I've helped with 2 different elections for one sheriff that won and one sheriff that didn't, and then I started running myself.
Back when you first started your campaign, what was the motivating factor behind, you know what, I think I want to run for sheriff?
I had a lot of people telling me, you should just run for sheriff, you should just run for sheriff, and I'm like, this is a big thing. How do you be a sheriff? In my mind, I thought the sheriff thing was just something that it took I don't know. It just took somebody that really knew how to be a sheriff, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I was like a deputy all that time and then the chief of police for Troy. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I know how to be a sheriff, but people kind of talked me into it. And I got to thinking, I'll just do it. And what's the worst case scenario? You get voted out after 4 years.
Fair enough,
right?
Fair enough.
So I hit it hard and I have enjoyed every minute of it. It's been humbling and an honor.
Excellent. And then in that time, of course, you go from having never done the job before as sheriff to having done it for, 8 years now?
Almost 8 years, yes.
Okay. What have been some of the biggest lessons you've learned while having spent time in office? Any major takeaways you'd say to whether you get elected again or someone succeeds you? What pieces of advice from your 8 years would you hand to them and tell you, like, hey, you need to know this getting into the job?
There are certain things you need to have a really strong number 2 person underneath of you. So a chief deputy, that's super important. I think one of the things I've learned is quality people. It's a good thing to have quality people working for you. They're out in the community all the time and you want educated professionals. And so that's huge to me, having people that know how to do their job and know how to respond to the public. PIO, which is our media people, that's super important. We've learned recently that that's a really strong position to have, just so the media kind of knows what's going on so they can get the story that they want right to begin with as soon as possible. So that's important too. PIO is important. People under you important. Your good sergeants to run your crew when you're not there, that's important. Just having a really good staff is super important. It's important to have communication. You look with your other agencies and things like that. I think, and your surrounding people, like the media. Like when I first took office, the media came to me and said, we don't have a strong relationship with the sheriff's office and we'd like to build that. And I said, I would too. And so the first incident we had was an escapee from another county who came into our county, and Clue TV showed up with their camera crew and they asked if they could set up, and I said, yes, by all means, set up over here. And my whole goal for that, they were happy, they were thrilled to death that I'd let them come in and be part of it. My whole goal was to get this person who escaped, their face on the 5 o'clock news. So the people in the county could watch for this person, call 911 if they saw this person, keep their doors locked, don't answer the door to this person. And I think that was really a good kickoff with the media to begin with, for sure, building relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you hear a lot about the idea of transparency when it comes to any sort of governmental system, particularly when it comes to stuff like the media, stuff like public relations, that sort of thing. And so that's pretty cool to hear that there's been a positive reception on your end and on the media's end to some of the stuff that you've been doing. I remember you had a recent event, it would have been a couple months ago, where you guys got some new tech at the sheriff's office, and you had a little bit of a showcase for some of the new cameras for the vehicles and that sort of thing. And that was an example, I think, of some of the stuff that you're bringing up.
Yes. So another thing we did too is right after we got our people out of PIO, we ran like not really a drill, but like a scenario maybe. Here's 3 things that have happened really bad, and we invited KHQ in and the radio, Evan Ellis and some others in, Clue TV. We invited these people in, media people in, so we could, they could ask us questions. And so our new people that just got out of PIO school would be able to know what kind of questions they're going to get asked. And so that was very helpful too for the media and for us. So we'd know what kind of questions we're going to get asked, and they knew how we would respond to the thing. So we had a scenario set up, and they would ask us about whatever was important to them in certain scenarios. So that was a really good thing too.
Mm-hmm. You know, when I have let people know that I'm doing these interviews with the county level candidates, there are a couple different issues that a number of folks have brought up to me when they say, oh, are you going to ask about this? Are you going to talk about that?
Yeah.
Some of those are recent events, some of them a little bit less recent, but the big ones that I keep hearing a lot about are the Idaho 4 situation. So everything that has happened since the events took place that November, however many years ago, and then how the county has been managing things in the interim leading up to the trial. Now, I know that there's a whole bunch there that really can't be talked about because of just the nature of the case having not gone to trial yet, but in your own words, how would you assess the county's handling of the situation and everything that's gone on? Because a lot of people had never experienced something like this before taking place around here.
So this was horrific for our community. I don't even know, honestly, I don't have the words for it. Horrific was one of the first words that came to my mind when this first happened, and it just almost unbearable. I immediately got on because it's inside the city, it's a city issue to begin with. Mm-hmm. And so I got a hold of who was the chief at the time. I got a hold of the chief of Moscow, and I said, anything you need, let me know. He did message me back and said thank you, and he asked a little bit later for a canine, and they ran one of our cadaver dogs around the building. Other than that, I housed him in my jail after he was caught, and if it is him, and he's got to go through court and everything, and through anyway. When they got him arrested, and he's been in my jail ever since until recently when he got transferred down to Ada County, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so other than that, and quite honestly, I didn't have very much to do. There was so much help that came in. The Idaho State Police came in, FBI came in. This was a big thing, and we needed help. This community needed help with this, and how everybody partnered together to make this come out and be successful in an arrest and everything with the prosecutor's office, FBI, the Idaho State Police, Moscow Police Department, anything we could do. I offered my detectives to the chief. Anything extra he needed, I told him I was here and I was available. But we didn't get much involvement just because of all the outside. People don't seem to realize, but we are a small community, right, with limited budgets, and the FBI and the state police, they have different budgets than we do, and so they have things. They have, well, I wouldn't call it toys, but they have equipment. They have things that we don't have because these are expensive things, and they do these kind of investigations on a regular basis. So we have to have them come in, and we have to partner with them so they can help us solve these crimes. With their equipment and stuff like that.
And it makes sense. You heard a lot about collaboration during that period of time.
And it was a good thing.
And it's interesting too, because it's an opportunity for a lot of the public who maybe doesn't know as much about law enforcement to see all of these different agencies working together when in maybe times gone by, they would have heard the concept of law enforcement or police and just thought of it as more of a blanket statement. There's actually a lot of, I don't want to say division meaning like you guys are divided or that you're competing with each other, but there's a lot of specific roles that you all have to play, as well as ways in which you are able to collaborate more directly. And I think that was a big spotlight moment for a lot of people on those agencies.
Yep, I agree. I think anywhere we can come in to help each other and work as one large team was huge, and I think that really came together good under this particular case.
Mm-hmm. The other situation that I get asked a lot about is, of course, the whole COVID era period of time. It looms large in a lot of people's minds for just the nature of government and law enforcement during that whole 2020 period. In a similar vein to the Idaho 4 situation, what retrospectives would you have to offer on that period of time, having been sheriff through all of that, and what are ways, like, going forward that, what are things that you consider now that you didn't consider before going into a situation like this, were it to happen again?
I think that education is super important. We take everything that we know about this, which at the time really wasn't a whole lot. You have to have a lot of common sense, and you have to have a lot of compassion for these kind of situations. And there's things that, this was new to us, right? It was new to a lot of people, and there was a lot of scare in this. There was a lot of, let's social distance, and let's, stay in our homes, and let's not go shopping, and let's not do this. And I think at the beginning of this was a lot of scare. I wanted people to be safe. I did not want anybody to panic. I wanted people to know that we were here for them in any way that we could be. And during that time, we did not issue any citations for social distancing or anything like that. We didn't make any arrests for anything. I believe that I allowed people to, which I think is best, to make their own decisions. If you want to social distance, social distance. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Some people made big deals out of this. Some people took it as, I'll just be safe and quiet and mind my business and I'll do my thing and everything. I think things could have been a lot worse than they were. Things could have been better. I think these kind of things help us to learn, help us to grow as a community, help us to grow as a department and agency. How do we do better next time? What can we do better next time? So we take everything that's happened and we go, how can we be better next time? I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. And then speaking on doing better next time, just if you do a self-assessment and discover, you know what, we made a mistake in a situation and trust was lost in the community as a result of either a mistake we made or an action. There are a lot of different ways to go about that, but what are ways that you think about, obviously you have to continue fulfilling your role as sheriff and as a department, but what do you do to regain or begin the rebuilding process when it comes to lost trust in situations like that?
I think one of the main things you do is you own it. You got to step up to the plate. If you screw up somehow, you got to own it, and you have to apologize for it, and in good faith, and hope that that's a good start. And then education is nice. So education on like moving forward to better get your employees educated better. Like I said, if you're talking about the COVID thing still, I didn't make arrests or anything like that. I didn't write any citations or anything like that. So I don't know exactly what you're looking for right
now.
there.
Yeah. I think I'm more looking, COVID obviously is an example in a lot of people's minds. And there's definitely debate out there about whether or not people behave the way that they ought to behave in a situation like that.
Yeah.
But whether that debate aside, whenever a department is dealing with a situation where, hey, people's trust in us has diminished, we still need to fulfill our responsibilities to the people, but now there's a level of tension, just in general.
Right. I think somehow you have to work through this. You have to own it, you have to apologize for it, you have to educate. Well, if it's one of your employees, you educate your whole team, you make sure that, and I think part of when you do screw up is not doing the same thing again. Mm-hmm. Right? Don't do it again. Mm-hmm. It's like your kids. If you have a kid, your child and you say, you shouldn't have done that, and don't do it again. If they don't do it again, they've learned, right? If they do it again, they get a spanking or whatever. But you find a way to discipline. And so I believe that I have a really good crew up there. I have a really good employees. If we do something, I also believe that if there's any kind of discipline that's given out, that it has to be the right amount for what has happened. So you don't get heavy-handed, you don't get light-handed. You got to find the exact, and you find the exact way to move forward in anything you're doing by surrounding yourself with people that have either had this happen to them before. How did they get through it? You surround yourself with people that have ideas and better ideas that maybe than even you do, and then you can come up with a way to solve these issues or solve the problem and not do it again. Move forward.
Yeah. You've brought up the quality of the people that work alongside you in the department a couple of times now. I just want to ask, how do you work to maintain the quality of those individuals?
I think you start out with a base. The base is you open up at the position, and let's say you have 5 people who test for it. You do background, you do a polygraph. You want the most professional person, the most compassionate person that you can find, courteous. There's integrity. There's all these things, that honesty. There's things that you look for in a person that you want out handling the call. Because calls vary from a dog call to a little child lost call to a domestic violence to a car rollover. And when you go to these calls, some people are in some type of form of trauma. And like a car rollover, how do you help that person feel easier while you're waiting for the ambulance to show up? So you train people. I have a lot of people that are trained first aid. I have an EMS people on my staff. So if we carry AEDs in our vehicles. We have a lot of equipment in our vehicles and a lot of things that actually help people. And hopefully the best tool in all of this law enforcement that I've found over the years is my mouth. It's not what's on my belt. It's not what's in my car. How do I talk to somebody? How do I negotiate in or out of this situation? How do I make it better? Do I make it worse or do I make it better? Your best tool that you have on your tool belt is your mouth. and I've been in this profession long enough that I see where you can get yourself in trouble really fast if you say the wrong words.
Yeah. It makes sense, and I think for people who have been on the receiving side of the law, it's exactly the same thing as well.
No, you're right about that.
Replay the footage in court and you realize, that's not nearly as funny as it sounded in my head.
No, you're right about that. But I don't have a problem with surrounding myself with people who have been doing this stuff for a long time, or even not. There's a lot of people that get into, that are in department heads. When I first took office, I started going to all these meetings, department head meetings and stuff, and just surround yourself with people who have good ideas for the community. And now that I'm in a position where I can make a difference and do something that's for the better good of the people and better good of the community, it is so cool to be able to be that guy that can say, yes, we're doing this, or no, this doesn't really help very much, we're not going to do that.
I'd like to lean more into some of the interdepartmental conversations that you have. Obviously, you're all doing different things, and there's only so much you can say at one of those meetings that'll impact or interact with something that somebody in, say, the treasurer's office is doing.
Right.
But there does seem to be a lot of interdepartmental communication that happens when disagreements or conflict arises in situations within the county, whatever that looks like. What are methods that you use to sort of either ameliorate or get through moments of conflict?
I think sometimes you have to, there's been times when I'm like, I've got an issue here, and the issue may have occurred in front of people. So there's a lot of times I'll go, hey, can we have a conversation, just you and me in private? And then you explain yourself or explain your situation or apologize or whatever you need to do to make things better to move forward. If you're bullheaded and I'm bullheaded and we're trying to get something done, but you got to have it your way and I got to have it my way, it's stagnant. We don't get nowhere. And I think there's the one thing you and I have to remember if we're trying to do some good for somebody is we need to put ourselves aside for a moment our selfishness or our pride maybe, or whatever it is that's hanging things up a little bit, and say, hey, we need to move forward and do this for the better good of the community or the better good of the people. This is what really helps. So let's put you and me aside for a minute and let's figure out how we can get through this.
Now switch gears over to the campaign side of things for a little bit. First of all, just how's it going when you're out, doing stuff for the election? How are people responding? What are they saying? How have interactions with the other candidates been? Just give us a nutshell.
I'll throw in the other candidates first. I think that so far everything's been pretty professional. We haven't had no knockdown dragouts at the forums, so that's really good. All of us have gotten along professionally pretty much for the most part, so that's good. And we've worked through any kind of situations we've had in the past. And so that part's not been bad at all. I'll tell you, to be in this position is very humbling. I was putting a sign out on A Street the other day, and one of my big 4x4 signs, and a car stopped. And they just came over and they just said, we're so happy that you're our sheriff, and my whole family's voting for you. You do a really good job. We don't read about you in a negative way in the paper. This guy was just throwing out all these things that I don't even think about, of how come he and his family has supported me. And it almost made me tear up, because it was like, this person, I don't even know. I don't know this person. And it was just so really neat that this person would just take the time to stop and tell me that they really appreciate everything I do. So I get things like that, or I'll get people that honk when I'm putting a sign. And short honks are, hey, we like you. Long honks are, no way. But no, it's been very humbling, very good. The support out there has been amazing.
Excellent. I know that it's, campaigning locally can be really odd, especially in a year like this year where the national news side of things overshadows a lot. But it can also bring attention, because everybody knows, like, oh, well, I'm going to go to the polls to vote for a president. Now I need to figure out what all these other offices are like too. Are there any, I guess this is the way I'll phrase the question. A lot of the overshadowing that the national politics does can make its way into conversations that you have with people on the street. So you might end up talking to them about political issues that have nothing to do with your office necessarily, but are part of the moment because of the election year. How do you bridge the gap between sort of the weird national conversation and the local conversation in terms of getting people's attention on what matters here?
Right. I think a lot of people will say, I don't like either candidate for president or whatever, and I try to encourage people to exercise their right to vote. Especially, maybe it doesn't make any sense to vote nationally because you're confused or you don't have enough knowledge or whatever, but I've always felt like your local voting it's all important to me, but local voting is so important because it's what really affects us locally. So having the right people in the right office from the top to the bottom is really, really important. So when people complain about the voting thing, I try to encourage them to exercise your right to vote. That's what we do, we vote. And I think that's important. Even if you don't feel your vote did any good, at least you voted and you exercised your right to vote, because I think that's important.
I'm going to switch gears one more time because I realize I'm going to get a talking to if I don't bring this up, but this jail situation that just popped up, or seemingly just popped up.
Yeah, how did I know that was going to come up?
Exactly. Eventually. I've had people who have asked me questions about the timing of it, and I've had people who've asked me questions about just in general what's going on, because there's a lot of unknown floating around. I know that you guys at the county had a conversation, public conversation about it in terms of this is the situation being mapped out. Do you mind just rehashing it for the folks that maybe didn't pay attention to that conversation?
Or weren't available at the time that we did. I would say that, so this all got started because we had a state inspector who came in and would let us know that things are okay. And so we'd get a certificate. Every year I have a jail, the Idaho Sheriff's Association has a jail inspector, and he would come, and he comes once a year and he looks at your jail. And there are some things that you can't help up there that jail standards require now. One of them is daylight to every cell. That's a perfect example. In 1973, when that jail was built, that wasn't a state requirement for an inmate to have daylight. So there's little things like that that start adding up, right? To make your jail get to the point where it's not, that it may not pass, right? That it may not pass the inspection. So we got a new fire marshal came in, and fire inspector came in and inspected things, and he called things that maybe the other one wasn't.
Okay.
And so then that put us in a situation where we were like, okay, well, let's see what it's going to take to fix the fire suppression. Let's see what it's going to take to fix the electrical. Let's see what it's going to take to put a 32-inch bar door in where a 24-inch bar door is now. Well, some of that stuff ended up being grandfathered in because the doors are embedded in concrete. How do you fix that? It's a basement building that supports an upstairs, right? So how do you go in there with a jackhammer and start bashing in walls in a basement? You have to get an engineer in there, right? And the engineer, they do a structural integrity thing, and to all that's going to cost a lot of money. So numbers were coming in for hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix the things that were first potentially not grandfathered in, which ended up being, so that saved us some money. So anyway, it's down to about, I need about $500,000 to fix things to stay inside of my jail inspection standards to where I can still continue to stay open and maintain the jail. I've been having meetings with people. Like I said, surround yourself with smarter people who have better ideas than you do. This will be fixed. It will be fixed one way or another. I believe that if I put my head in with the smart people that are around us and we all come up with a conclusion to move forward, and this will get fixed. And my fire suppression is to fix it is very expensive, but keep in mind it's not the fire suppression for just the jail. It's an outdated fire suppression for the whole courthouse. So it's a big bill, but it's a big bill for the entire courthouse, not just the jail. So my electrical was $67,000 to fix. When those bids started coming in, it started scaring people like, oh my gosh, this year's budget's already been given to us, right? So it's already been finalized and given to us. So now where do we find $400,000 or $500,000 or even $100,000 if you want to start piecing things together? Like, let's do electrical first, because that could cause a fire. All these things have been this way. I have certificates to prove that I pass every year. So I say, let's not get excited. Let's not jump the gun. Let's not shoot from the hip. Let's get together with people that are business minded. They've gone through this kind of stuff before. I've reached out to Jason Davis, who is the sheriff of Lewis County. He has closed his jail. His jail scenario is close to the same as mine as far as in the time frame of being built and everything, but he had a lot less people in his jail and less employees and things like that. So it was easier for him to be able to close and house his inmates in a different area. If he has 4 or 5 or 6 inmates, I have 22 on an annual average. I have 22. So sometimes I have 30, sometimes I have 12, but my average is 22. So I need to figure out exactly how I'm going to, I got to fix my problems there, or house my inmates somewhere else and close, or go for a bond or a levy, or petition the state for a half cent sales tax, so everybody's part of fixing this problem. And so this is going to take some time. This isn't something that you can just go, well, you know about this and you screwed it up. This isn't one of those things. This is a big thing that takes a little bit of time, takes a lot of smart people around me to get figured out.
And I suppose hearing this, framing it as a sheriff-specific problem just because it's the sheriff's task of maintaining the jail doesn't necessarily fit the bill because the bill is actually paid by the commissioners.
It's a commissioner thing.
And because if you're describing the repairs as being far more extensive than just the jail building, you know, a fire suppression system that is for the courthouse as well as for the jail, you're dealing with a problem that is more county-wide and is going to require county-wide collaboration to solve.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that it's not a hurdle to get across, but it's not just, you know, a single department effort to figure out how to untie the knot, so to speak.
Right. So there are some things that we can do. We've already been approved on our budget, but there's some things like each year the county commissioners give us 3 new cars. So there's some, maybe I could get 1 car and use some of that money I was going to use for cars to get the jail fixed. You know, and there's other things. There's I don't know if it's called rainy day funds or whatever, but there's money in places that you can tap into a little bit. You can adjust some things. We can adjust a few things at the sheriff's department if we have to for a year or two, for a budget season or two, until we can get these things fixed and move forward.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. One other situation that is recent to you guys is all of the fire situations that have been going on the past summer and that sort of thing. I've talked to folks who are very interested to know, just tell us one story, because you guys were pretty involved in helping with either search and rescue or interactions. What were some of the more intense experiences you had while out dealing with Gwen Fire, Texas Ridge, all of that?
I would say the first thing that I would like to say about that is I really felt like I didn't want any life lost. Mm-hmm. I don't want anybody to die from thinking that their property or their belongings are more important than their life. And so we were down there in the middle of all of that, trying to help people evacuate, trying to help people get organized for what was coming. The fire departments and people were helping. The Vista Power. I can't even tell you how many people came together to help. It was just absolutely amazing. The collaboration, if I could use that word, with everybody was amazing. Julietta, Kendrick Fire, Moscow Fire, everybody, Troy, everybody came together and just tried to make that better, tried to save life, tried to save property. That's what we do, right? Mm-hmm. And so one story I will tell you was heart jerking, I guess, and it really helped me see the potential of the danger and everything. But I had one deputy with me, and we were trying to get people where the fire was coming up the valley towards our county. And we were just south of our county line, and there was a lady there that I guess she just couldn't believe her place was burning, and she was kind of froze. And she had her dog with her, and we kept telling her, "Come on, you need to come with us." And she was just froze. And so my deputy picked her up, and I picked up the dog, and we ran her across the street, across Highway 3, and we put her in a car. And her family or friends or somebody took her away, but I don't know if she would have made it from there if we wouldn't have got her out of there. And her place burned to the ground. They lost everything. Oh, man. But when I was like, how do you put such a value on your stuff, but your stuff is all you have, then that's what the value is. And she was probably just in total shock, I would imagine. And so I was there. I felt like we were there to help save lives and save property, obviously, but life is number one. And so that was the one story that probably dug deepest in my heart. And there was a guy on a dozer. We were working with him to try to get a fire line in, and he was trying to save homes and stuff. And there was so much, just people coming together to help the community it was actually almost breathtaking. It's a story in itself. But the fire departments, everybody coming together, people from other counties coming up. I had help from Nez Perce County. I had help from Clearwater County. We all were trying to make sure the fire just couldn't get any farther than it was. And we would be looking at it one moment and we'd go, okay, we're good. And it wasn't 30 seconds later and the wind would shift and it'd bring the fire back towards us. And so that's why I put Julietta on a level 3. I had talked to the fire department and they said, this is going to switch back. The wind's unpredictable and this community could burn. And like Malden in Washington, it was terrible how the fire just went through that little community and burned it. And I went over to that community after the fact of the fire, and I drove through that community, and it was one of the saddest things you'll ever see. And I just didn't want that for Julietta. So I put it on level 3. Please evacuate. And I left patrols there overnight and stuff to help people from not, for anybody who was thinking about burglarizing or anything like that. I kept deputies in there overnight. I had my search and rescue down there helping. We did everything that we possibly could. And if we were lacking in any area, it's another one of those situations where you learn from what's going on. I've never had to evacuate a city before. So that was new to me too. Yeah. But my most important thing was to make sure nobody passed away that day.
Just a couple more questions for you. Let's say you, all is said and done, November 5th comes and goes, and you do get elected. What is your vision for the next 4 years of the Latah County's Sheriff's Department?
I think the next 4 years we'll continue doing what we do. I get a lot of compliments on my deputies and the job we do, so that's encouraging all the time. I would like to get a K-9. I've been working on a K-9 for a long time, and I believe that I'm going to get a K-9 here pretty soon. I was working on a second school resource deputy. Though it takes a lot of money to do those things. You have to basically have a body, and you have to have a deputy who really wants to do it, who has a heart for the kids. And so Genesee applied for a grant to supply a deputy inside their school, which was the coolest thing. I'm so proud of Genesee for doing that, and I hope other schools get on that bandwagon. I had a deputy up there that wanted to do it, so we filled the position right away. As soon as that deputy goes to SRO school, which will probably be this summer, and when school's out, it's the best time to send one to SRO school, and so we'll send him to that, and he'll come back. He's a post-certified deputy, obviously. He's been working for me for years, and he'll fill that position for Genesee. And the coolest thing about that is the deputy that I have doing school resource now can actually spend more time in the other schools. So he doesn't have to go all the way south to Genesee. He can actually stay in Potlatch, Beauville, Deary, right, and get these schools up here, Troy. And so get all these schools up here and spend time in them, and spend actually maybe another half hour, another hour each day in each school. I think the school resource deputy position is one of the most important positions I have. It's a place where you build relationships and establish trust with the young kids.
Yeah, and if you start there, hopefully they end up being upstanding citizens one day.
Well, hopefully they trust us when they have a situation or a call.
Just got one more for you, and that's just to give you the opportunity to say anything that you want to say to people who might be watching this video. And then also, where can people go to find out more about you, about your campaign, and what you're hoping to do for Latah County?
I have a website. It is skilesforsheriff.com. So if anybody would like to go on there, I have some of my achievements on there, education on there, what I'm about on that website. And I would appreciate it if anybody wants to know more about me. They can go to that website. I would like a K-9. I'll be working on that. We just keep moving forward, trying to do the right thing for the right reasons.
Thanks so much for talking.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you, Aiden.
And that was our conversation with Sheriff Richie Skiles. As with all candidates, I highly encourage you to check them out yourself so that you can go into the election well prepared and educated. We'll have the relevant links posted with this video, and as always, if you have any questions, please reach out. I'm Aiden Anderson, and this has been Candidate Candids. We'll see you next time.